Welcome to the Chess Angle. This is not your typical chess podcast. If you're an amateur or club-level player, the Chess Angle is for you. Our content is aimed at busy adults who are serious about the game but have limited study time. Featured guests include both amateur and titled players alike. And now, here's your host, Director of the Long Island Chess Club, Neil Bellon.
Welcome, everybody. Thanks for tuning in. A reminder that everyone is invited to email me if you have a question or a topic suggestion or just a comment or thought on something I've said or something we discussed on the show. All listeners, whether you just discovered us or whether you're a longtime listener, are welcome to message me. There is no membership or Patreon requirement, nothing like that. So everyone is encouraged to share your thoughts. If you wish to do so, you can email me directly, info@thechessangle.com. You can also go on our website and click the contact form to leave a message. You can also leave a voice message if you wish. That's kind of a cool option. We had a few of those already. But everyone is welcome to share your thoughts. I can't promise that I will read it on the show, but I certainly encourage you to reach out. And without further ado, let's go to this week's listener mailbag.
You've got mail.
Our first message is from Scotty. He says, Neil, I wanted to first and foremost thank you for your podcast, which has played a huge role in motivating me to get involved in OTB chess. In fact, I recently joined a local club and have already played in my first weekend tournament. None of that would have happened without the influence of your show. Thank you. My question is regarding personal goals and expectations. I am still officially unrated, but have been playing chess casually since childhood. I am now 30, and I was surprised to find that my skill level seems to be pretty comparable to players I assumed would be light years better than me. For example, I managed to draw a player rated 1550 and handily defeat a player rated 1480. I also lost a couple of tough games to similarly rated players. My initial goal was to reach a USCF rating of 1300 and grow from there. Given the sample size of my rated games is still very small, I am wondering if this personal milestone might have been set a bit too low, or if, in your opinion, I simply need more rated games under my belt before settling on any concrete goals. I'd like to find the happy medium between realism and challenging myself, and it may just be the case that only time will tell. I'd love to hear your thoughts on goal setting and expectations for beginners and intermediate tournament players generally. Again, thank you for the show and for your time, Scotty. Well, Scotty, thanks so much for your email. The fact that the show had a big influence on you actually joining an OTB tournament, that's really cool. Happy to hear it. Now, it says your initial goal was to reach a USCF rating of 1300. So the way it works is when you play in your first tournament, you're unrated, like you said, and then you get a provisional rating. So let's say it's a 5-round tournament. It'll say whatever your rating is, like based on however many games, like based on 5 games. What you're going to notice is that while your rating calibrates, because what happens is, I believe it's when you play 28 games, once you reach something like that, then you get a standard rating, and up until then it's provisional. And you're going to see these crazy spikes in your rating. It's going to go like up, down as it's calibrating. So yes, I do agree that it's a small sample size and you should wait it out. But based on what you're telling me, I think you're rated much higher than 1300. If you drew a 1550 and you beat a 1480 pretty solidly, you're definitely stronger than that. So yeah, I would just play. Don't get obsessed with the number, because as I said, it's going to be tough to track because it bounces around while it's calibrating. Just play your games, do the best you can, and then you'll have a better sort of barometer of where you're at. But I have a feeling, based on what you're telling me, after the 28 games, it's going to be higher than 1300. So just play. And then once you play those 28 to 30 games, then you can kind of sit back and say, okay, this is where I'm at. And I think it's going to be higher. So yeah, I think it's a little too soon as far as rating goals, just play, study, enjoy it. And then once you get an established rating, like let's say you play in 2 or 3 tournaments, and let's say you figure out that you're, say, a 1600 player, something like that. Then as far as goal setting, I would only set a goal at 100 points higher from where you are. And I'm not the first person to say that. So in other words, just using 1600 as an example, if you rated 1600 and you're thinking about rating goals, your goal should be to get to 1700. Because what some people do is, oh, I'm 1600, but I want to make master, which is 2200. That's too broad of a goal, and it puts way too much pressure on yourself. You can't say, well, I'm 1600, I want to get to 2200. You have to work in steps. So if you're 1600, say, I want to get to 1700, then I want to hang out in the 1700s for a while, and then I'm going to push for 1800. And then I want to hang out in the 1800s for a while, and then I want to push to 1900. That's the way I would do it. So as far as goal setting and expectations for beginners, just play. Don't put too much pressure on yourself. And then once you get an established rating, like I said, just go for those 100-point goal increments because those are realistic. And when I say 100 points, I'm not talking about in a month. You want to maybe look for a 100-point increase, say, every year. It could be even more than a year. Really depends. But as long as you're moving forward, that's what we want. And it's a funny thing. I've seen a wide range of amateur improvement. Like it's all over the map. Like, for example, I know players rated about 1200 who study with a coach every week. They buy courses and books online like it's going out of style. They study every day. And despite all that work, they play in tournaments on a regular basis, they've still been rated 1200 for years. There are other people who have that same regimen, the same coaching, and after 5 or 6 years, maybe their rating will go up 70 points. There are other people with that same regimen where they'll shoot up 300 points in 2 years. It's really, really all over the map. And I've seen this. I know other players who really don't study that much, who don't read a lot of books. They mostly just play online. They play a lot of blitz. They analyze their games, and they're rated over 2000. I mean, we had a guest. He's a regular at the club, Zealand Chen. He's like 2100 something. He'll probably be master. He pretty much just learned from playing blitz and just analyzing his games. Maybe he read one book. Some people can do that. I mean, I think that was Hikaru's deal, right? Hikaru Nakamura, he mostly played, used the computer a lot, but it's my understanding, correct me if I'm wrong, he really didn't do a lot of traditional studying. He just learned from playing and analyzing with the computer. I don't think he was much of a book person. For some people, that's not going to work. For some people, it will. For some people, it might work a little bit. So it's really all over the map. And I know people hate those sort of it depends type of answers, but it's really true. Like there's no formula. You can't say, all right, I'm rated 1400. How do I get to 1500? That answer is going to be different for everybody. And then you have other people who their knowledge of chess theory is really good. They have a solid opening repertoire, really good endgame skills, but they just don't do well in tournaments because they get nervous or they just lack confidence or they just sort of crack under the pressure of tournament conditions because it's a lot. It's overwhelming. It's touch move. You got to use the clock. You have to write the moves down. Other people are watching your games. You might play an opponent who's just very intimidating. There's just a lot of factors that go into it. So there are a lot of talented chess players where their rating doesn't really reflect their strength just because, again, they can't handle tournament conditions. Because remember, if someone's rated 1500, that's not so much an indicator of their chess strength. It's an indicator of how well they're performing at tournaments. So you have to keep that in mind. So again, it sounds like you're enjoying yourself. Just play. And yes, you definitely need to get some more games under your belt. And then I would just go from there. But great question, Scotty. I appreciate it. Thank you. Next email is from Chad. He says, hey, Neil, I wanted to reach out and say thanks for spending some time on correspondence chess. Personally, I have never seen the appeal of correspondence games that allow for engine use, as this seems to be more of a contest of who has the better computer. But to each their own. I do usually have several daily games active on chess.com. I have also recently started a US chess membership and have been playing officially rated correspondence games. As a father of 2 It's very difficult to consistently make time to play more traditional games, so it's great that this allows me to make chess a part of my life. But I have another reason. I have a condition called aphantasia. Basically, my brain is unable to show any kind of imagery in my head. I close my eyes and it's like the lights go out. The CPU is running, but the monitor is off. As you can imagine, this makes visualization while sitting at the board extraordinarily difficult. Playing over the board becomes a huge hurdle, and improvement becomes an exercise in frustration. Daily games provide a crutch, as I can play out lines of moves and better engage in the game. I just wanted to put this out there in case other listeners deal with similar challenges. Daily games may offer a better avenue for enjoying the game. Thanks again for the pod. Really enjoy hearing your perspective on things. Best wishes, Chad. Chad, thanks so much for sharing that. So I've heard of aphantasia. I haven't heard too much about it, but the fact that the daily games are providing you a way of enjoying the game with that condition is fantastic. I appreciate you sharing that. So I was happy to read this on the air. I think you make some great points. And I did get a lot of feedback, positive feedback about last week's episode on correspondence chess. For those of you who haven't heard it, you may want to check that out. That was a guest episode. But thanks so much, Chad, for bringing that up. I really appreciate it. And now we're going to discuss our main content, which are weekend chess events, specifically the problems with those events and how we can improve them. This episode is a response to 2 blogs written by FM Nate Solon about the issues with tournaments. And he wrote this after his experience at the 2025 U.S. Amateur Team East Tournament in Parsippany, New Jersey. But as he says in his blog, these thoughts were kind of in his mind even before he started the tournament. I'm a big fan of FM Nate Solon's work because he factors in the practical as well. He understands it's not just about chess knowledge and theory, but there are certain practical things about playing in OTB tournaments that you have to factor in, and you're playing as a working adult with a family. So that's what I like about Nate Solon. He's very realistic and very practical. The first blog he wrote is called I Don't Like Chess Tournaments. And the second one is What Would a Fun Chess Tournament Look Like? So in the second blog, basically readers said, okay, well, you're saying these are the problems with chess tournaments. What would an ideal one look like for you? So he wrote a second blog. I will link up both of these in the show notes. I highly encourage you to check them out. They're very well written. If you didn't read them yet, no worries. You'll still be able to follow this podcast. And again, we're discussing, just so we have some context, the weekend chess events where you have anywhere from 5 to 7 games. It could be even 8 or 9 games spread out over 3 or 4 days. I mean, if it's a typical weekend event, it's usually Friday night, Saturday, and Sunday. But if it's a holiday weekend, it might be like a Friday to Monday thing or a Thursday to Monday or a Friday to Tuesday type of thing. That's what we're focusing on. We're not going to focus on club level events. I mean, I'll probably throw in some comments on why I prefer club events. That's my own bias though. But just to be clear, so when we say weekend events, again, that means several games over the course of 2 to 4 days. Club events mean a once a week game. So most chess clubs, they're local. Only people who live around the area generally go there. Most people live within like 45 minutes or so, although some drive further. But with a club level event, instead of the 5 rounds, say, being played over the course of a weekend, it's played over the course of 5 weeks because it's one game each week. So it's spread out more. There are some definite advantages of that, which I'll mention as we go through this, but that's the context. So let's talk about Nate's first blog, which is called, again, I Don't Like Chess Tournaments. What I'm going to do is I'm going to read a couple of quotes or a quote, and then I'll give my own sort of response and opinion to it. But again, both of these blogs are very, very well written. And this is what he starts with. This is the I Don't Like Chess Tournaments. In the beginning, he was talking about a tough game he had where he lost. And he said, I made a few more moves, laughed, and extended my hand in resignation. I put a lot of emphasis on losing with grace, especially against kids. I congratulated my opponent on the win and went up to my hotel room. My plan for the night was to order room service and watch TV. Well, I agree with him completely. If I had a bad loss, I would want to go back to the hotel, order some comfort food, and watch Netflix until I burned a hole in my retina. Like, that's what I would want to do. So I agree with him there. I also give him a lot of credit on losing gracefully against kids because a lot of adults may not take it so well. So that just shows that he's a classy guy. So I agree with him there. And then next he says, a lot of us experience the tug and pull of going to tournaments or staying home. It takes a huge psychological effort to psych ourselves up to play. When we don't put in that effort, we go months or years without playing. Because we like chess, we feel like we should like chess tournaments. And if we don't play, we think it's because there's something wrong with us. We're lazy or cowards, or we don't like chess enough. But maybe there's a simpler explanation. Maybe the reason so many of us struggle to play regularly is that these tournaments kind of suck. All right, and I agree with him there, and we're going to talk about specifics in a minute. But it really is true because it's a lot. Playing in these weekend tournaments, which is one of the major reasons I don't do it, it's a lot of planning and effort. So like he said, you really have to psych yourself up and build up your energy, which can be tough to do after a week of work. You would have to work it out with your family. And of course, you got to work out expenses because these tournaments are not cheap. You have travel expenses, the hotel, food, the entry fee. So he continues, he says, OTB tournaments are enormously unpleasant. They're very costly in terms of time and money. They're incredibly grueling. They disrupt your eating and sleeping. As I am Greg Shahade wrote in an old blog post, when I play in today's standard American chess tournaments, I honestly feel like less of a human being. So I definitely agree. And it really has to do with the way that they schedule the rounds. And we'll get to that in a minute. But it is very grueling. It really is not normal. You're completely off your sleeping and eating schedule. And that can be very tough. Whereas playing at the club level, that's not really an issue, right? You go to work, you have dinner, you go to your tournament game, your local game at your club, wherever it is. Maybe it's a 15, 20-minute, 30-minute drive, and then you go home. Very simple. So it's completely different. So then Nate continues with some specific issues. He says, what is less cool is that parents and other hangers-on flood every square inch of the hotel. You can't sit down. You can't get a coffee. The cafe sports a long line at all hours. I'm sure the parents don't love being crammed in either. So yeah, it is crowded. It's tough to find some space. And even simple things like you just want a coffee and there's like 20 people waiting online. And I know for me personally, I get especially impatient on coffee lines because I'm just a regular coffee drinker. I just want a dark roast coffee with a little half and half. That's it, plain coffee. I'm not into the candy drinks and the frappuccinos and the, extra soy milk, no foam, low whip, all those annoying like orders. But unfortunately, most coffee places don't have a separate area if you just want drip coffee. Like that should be legislated as far as I'm concerned. No, but all kidding aside, it's little things like that can be very frustrating if you can't just find a place to sit. And if you just want a cup of coffee because maybe you have a round coming up, but there's like 30 people online. So then Nate discusses the tournament schedule, the round times. And he says, on the first night, the late round starts at 7:30 p.m. So on the first day of the tournament, you can easily be playing past midnight. With your sleep destroyed, the tournament next targets your meals. The second day round starts at 11 a.m. and 6 p.m., trampling right over lunch and dinner. On the third day, having put you into a defenseless stupor by knocking out your sleep and nutrition, the tournament delivers the coup de grace, the early morning round at 9 a.m. Good luck getting breakfast before the round starts. While the United States Amateur Team East is an extreme example, most tournaments in the United States share at least some of these problems, and he lists them, and they are unreasonable round times or schedules, sleep disruption, difficulty getting healthy meals, and uncomfortable or unsanitary conditions. And I agree with Nate completely, and it's funny, I haven't played in tournaments in at least 15 years. It might even be closer to 20 years because once I started the club, I kind of just did that because I had my game every week. But everything Nate is describing in 2025 was true 15 or 20 years ago. It's like nothing's changed. And, reading his post again, because I was thinking about getting back into this. I'm not sure if I want to, but as I said, because I'm over 50 now, I would probably opt for a seniors tournament. And I think Nate says that in one of the blogs at some point, just because with seniors tournaments, it's just more my speed as far as how it's scheduled. But Nate continues. He goes, I know a lot of this may come off as sour grapes because I had a bad result, but the truth is I had written half of this post before the tournament was over. It's not lost on me that this could have contributed to my poor performance. Of course, chess is more fun when you win than when you lose, but for me, a string of good results was just papering over the aspects of tournament chess that I genuinely don't like. And I agree. Now, it's funny. He says like this may come off as sour grapes because of his bad result. I didn't think that at all. I honestly thought everything he was saying like made sense regardless of his result. So in my book, he really didn't need to sort of justify like his complaints, because I think even if he did well at this tournament, he probably would have felt the same way. But I agree completely. And then he reminds us that many players made a conscious decision to stop playing in over-the-board tournaments, even titled ones. And this is what Nate says. This is a quote. I've noticed that some of the players I admire most have made a conscious decision to stop playing in OTB tournaments. FM Peter Giannatos, the director of the innovative and successful Charlotte Chess Center, has said that he no longer plays OTB chess because he finds it too stressful. I am Levy Rosman has made a well-documented string of attempts to get back into OTB chess, which usually starts out with optimism, but ends when the stress and heartbreak of tournament chess interfere too much with his responsibilities as a content creator. Even Magnus Carlsen decided to walk away from the World Championship because the stress and time commitment involved was too overwhelming, and he rarely plays classical chess these days. Right now, we're going to take a short break, and I'm going to share some more of my own opinions, and then we'll discuss what a fun and ideal chess tournament should look like. That's coming right up. Now, before we get to Nate's second blog, which is where he actually gives an example of an ideal tournament, I just want to kind of give my own pitch for club level events as opposed to weekend events. And I know a syndic's going to say, yeah, well, that's because you just, you run a chess club, so you're biased. That's true. But you can take what I'm saying, you could throw it away. But there are a lot of advantages to playing once a week at a club level as opposed to a weekend tournaments. And of course, this is just my own opinion. So number one, it's really not normal to play that much chess over the course of 3 or 4 days. You're talking about 5, 6, or 7 classical time control games condensed into 3, 4, 5 days. That's just not normal. Okay, the human brain is just not meant to concentrate like that. And especially at the amateur level, for those of us who aren't titled players, for us mere mortals, that's just a brutal schedule. It's not normal. What Nate said about the sleeping and eating being thrown off, that's true as well. And if you're not sleeping properly, you're done. You're not going to play well, at least for me. If my sleep is interrupted, I'm pretty much useless in front of a chessboard. And at the club level, you basically play your weekly game and then you go home. That's it. It's not really changing your eating or sleeping schedule. It's only 1 game per week. It's not overwhelming. As I alluded to earlier, if you lose, let's just say you have a really bad game, like a stinker of a game, you have a week to shake it off. So there's less of a chance you're going to tilt at the club level because it's out of your, if it takes more than a week for you to get that loss out of your system, you got problems. But for a weekend tournament, if it goes to the bitter end, let's say it's a tough end game and you lose, and then your next game is in like an hour, that's very tough to shake off the baggage from that loss and just start another game fresh with a clear head. Very difficult to do. So you have to have nerves of steel for those weekend tournaments. The weekend tournaments are also very expensive. Money's tight now for everybody. Everything is so expensive. Where I am in the Northeast, the prices of everything, it's like through the roof. We all know like car insurance, home insurance is going up like crazy. So, people are more budget conscious is my point. And these weekend tournaments are expensive. The hotel, food, travel, even if you want coffee, all that stuff adds up. And you could spend several $100s, whereas for a 5-round club tournament, that might be, whatever, 30, 40, $50, somewhere around there. And that's for the whole thing. Whereas you travel for a weekend tournament, you're paying a couple $100s or so a night just for the hotel, give or take. So it's very expensive. And also it's hard for people to sort of give up a whole weekend if they have a family. So there's more logistics. You would have to work it out with your spouse or your partner. And then, of course, you risk that you do all that planning, you go to the tournament, and then God forbid something happens, you need it at home. All these things happen. Whereas with the club level events, it's not a big deal. If you miss around, you take a bye, or if there is kind of an emergency, you're close to home, you can easily get there. I also find that the conditions at the club level, it's just more fun, for lack of a better word. It's more, I don't want to say more pure, but the weekend tournaments have this sort of like dirtiness to them. It's like this weird competitive, I don't know, there's like a certain sketchiness to it that you don't get at the club level. But yet the club level tournaments, they're still very competitive. They're still rated. Okay, so remember, when I say club level tournaments once a week, we're still talking about rated games. We're not talking about a casual club. I just think they're much better. Now, I get it that some people are going to say, well, you know what, in my area, there are no chess clubs. I don't have a choice. If I want to play rated tournaments, I have to go to a weekend major event where it's several games over the course of a few days because there are no clubs near me. Like, what do I do? And in that case, that kind of stinks. I get it. Your only choice would be to be crazy like myself and start your own club. Obviously, most people aren't going to do that. So I do understand it. That's a tough thing. I don't really have an answer for you. If you prefer the idea, if you like the idea of playing in a club more than a weekend event, but there's nothing around you, that's a tough situation. So that's just my take on club events versus weekend tournaments. So now let's discuss Nate's second blog, What Would a Fun Chess Tournament Look Like? And here Nate gives his recommendations for an ideal tournament structure. So I'll share his opinion and then I'll give my own. So he starts with the time control. He says nothing slower than the FIDE standard of 90 plus 30. So that means 90 minutes with 30 seconds added per move. Now, let's discuss an increment versus a delay, because I actually disagree with Nate here. I actually prefer the delay rather than an increment. So with an increment, let's say there's a 30-second increment. What that means is you get 30 seconds added to your time per move. And whatever you don't use from that 30-second increment, you get to keep. So for example, using a 30-second increment, again, if you make your move, let's say in 10 seconds, the 20 seconds left over from that increment, you get to keep that. That's added to your time. With a delay, you don't get to keep the time that you don't use. So what happens is, with a 30-second delay, it ticks down for 30 seconds. You get 30 seconds added before your base remaining time starts to tick away. So with a delay, let's say it's a 30-second delay. If you only use 10 seconds of those 30 seconds, the extra 20 seconds you don't keep. So in other words, you cannot add time to what you already have. Whereas with an increment, you get to keep what you don't use. So that's the difference. So just let me run that back. So with the 30-second increment, like when you play on chess.com, whatever you don't use from those 30 seconds per move, that gets added to your time. So if it's a 30-second increment and you make your move in 15 seconds, you get to keep those remaining 15 seconds. With a 30-second delay, that just means your main time control is not going to start ticking down until those 30 seconds are over. So with a delay, if you only use 15 of the 30 seconds, the remaining 15 seconds you don't get to keep. So it's basically with a delay, you use it or lose it. Now you may say, well, if that's the case, wouldn't I prefer an increment? And the reason is, I don't like the increment because then the game can just drag on and on and on. I mean, at our club, we have game 90, delay 10, and the games can be like 3 hours and 20 minutes, 25 minutes, really depending on if it drags out. Most of them don't, but I would prefer a delay instead of an increment. That's just my take. Now, I think his proposed 90 plus 30, 90 minutes with a 30-second increment is a little too much. I would do 90 minutes with, say, a 15-second delay. That's what I would do. Is that way the games would be like 3 hours-ish. And if you do 2-day, I think that's perfect. Some people might think that's too fast, but that's what I would want. Like game 90, 15-second delay. Maybe you could convince me of a 30-second delay, but not an increment, because then all that time gets added on. The games can really drag out. That's what I would do as far as time controls. Next thing Nate says is no more than 2 classical games per day. I completely agree with that. Let's move on. He says rounds should start no earlier than 10 a.m. and end no later than 7. Well, I agree with the second part. The 2 ideal round times for me would actually be 9 a.m. and 3 p.m. So you have round 1 at 9 a.m. I know it's a little early, but I don't think it's too bad. So you get breakfast, 9 a.m., but here's the thing. With my proposed game 90 with a 15-second delay, your game's going to be done around lunchtime, right? So 9, you figure around 12, 12:30. Beautiful. Your game's over, you have lunch. Perfect. And then, since your next game doesn't start till 3, you have some downtime. So you have lunch, you can get coffee, whatever. You want to take a nap, you want to walk around. Next game is at 3. And again, because of my proposed time control, your game's going to end maybe 6, 6:15, probably earlier. And guess what? 6, 6:15, that's dinner time. Perfect. You have dinner, and then you still have some semblance of an evening. You want to relax, you want to just hang out, you want to go to bed early, you just want to chill and watch TV. I mean, if I played 2 games that day, game 90, I would just want to relax and watch TV in the room, kind of unwind, clear my head. Next, he says that boards should be provided. I agree with that. I'm not as adamant about that as some people. I mean, it's nice, but I guess I'm just used to having to bring my own equipment. I know people in Europe think it's crazy that chess clubs in the US, a lot of them, you have to bring your own equipment, but that's just how it is. And then he says water and coffee should be provided. I agree with him there, definitely for water. Now, for coffee, I am, as you could probably tell, a bit of a coffee snob. So if they're going to provide coffee, I want like strong coffee. I want like dark roast. I don't want something that tastes like water. Like if you're going to serve coffee, make it good. Like I would want it fresh. I don't want an urn that's been sitting there and it's tastes like water. So if you're going to do coffee, like do it right or don't do it. But to be fair, that might be a little too much. Definitely there should be water available. Absolutely. And then he says clean bathrooms. Of course, that's a given. Nate then continues to give a sample schedule for a fictional tournament, and he gives some round times. Again, I would go with the 9 a.m. and 3 p.m., 2 rounds a day, game 90, delay 15, not increment. And I think that's perfect because after the first round ends, it's lunchtime and you have some downtime before the second game. Second game starts at 3 o'clock. That ends right at dinner time. So you eat and you still have your whole evening ahead of you to do whatever you want. So that would be a great weekend of classical chess where the time control is not ridiculous and the schedule is not ridiculous. And my proposed schedule would not interfere with your eating or sleeping at all. I basically agree with what Nate laid out. I just think the 90 plus 30, 90 minutes with a 30-second increment, that's still a little too much for me. To each his own. But at any rate, both of these blogs are excellent. I wanted to take an episode to respond to them. I pretty much agree with everything he says, except for a few minor things like with the time control. But it's very well written. And I do agree that we need to improve the quality of these weekend events. And the main thing that has to change are the time controls and the round times, because that sort of trickles down into everything else, right? Because when you change the time control and the round time, then everything else falls into place. Your eating schedule falls into place. Your sleeping schedule falls into place. And it's just much more enjoyable. You have some downtime. You don't want a situation where all you're doing is playing chess the entire weekend. You do want some downtime to catch up with friends. That's part of the fun. But I agree, it definitely needs to change. I know just looking online, there was a lot of positive response to Nate's blogs. It received a lot of buzz because everything he wrote is pretty much correct. He really hits it on the head. But the thing is, are the organizers going to make these changes? Are they going to take note? I don't know if they're aware of his blog, but I'm very curious because many, many people agree with Nate's proposed changes, right? Like, these time controls, the round times, the fact that you can't eat and sleep, that really has to change. But are the tournament organizers going to do anything about it for those weekend events, or are they going to fall back on tradition? Well, traditionally, this is always how we've done it. But that old expression, tradition is what people fall back on when they're not willing to take the time to do something the right way, right? Oh, well, we've always done it that way. Well, it's definitely time to make a change, because not only are people who play in these tournaments, because there's no chess club near them, not only are they suffering, but as Nate points out, I think it was in the second blog, they're keeping away many potential tournament participants. In other words, a lot of people who used to play in tournaments or who are interested in playing in tournaments, these types of conditions may be keeping them away. So hopefully in the future, things will change. As it is now, I still think club level chess is the way to go for the reasons I stated earlier. But this is certainly an interesting discussion. I'm sure we're going to revisit it on the podcast at some point. But at any rate, really appreciate you listening. A reminder, if you have any thoughts about this episode, a question for me, a comment, a topic suggestion, anything, everyone is welcomed to reach out, info@thechessangle.com, or you can go to our website. There's contact information there, but I would love to hear from you. Hope you enjoyed the episode, and as always, I hope you win your next game. Have a great day, everybody.